Is it just me, or did January vanish in the blink of an eye? But here we are, already settling into the pace of 2026. Hi, friends, my name is Salima, and on this channel, I mostly focus on the world of luxury makeup. But I have made a mental note this year to ensure that at least my monthly favorites videos include more skincare, hair care, and fragrance. I truly hope you enjoy this more holistic look at what I'm loving lately. Let's dive in. So, every year during the peak winter months, my skin goes from its usual self to being incredibly dry. We are talking redness, eczema flares, the whole works. Because of that, I had to get really intentional. I usually like to keep my morning routine simple, but right now I am adding extra steps because if I don't, my skin feels tight and dry by noon, and my makeup just doesn't stand a chance. That brings me to a product that I have reintroduced, the Dr. Ceuracle Kombucha Tea Essence. I say reintroduce because after finishing a bottle, I wandered off to try other milky toners, but I'm officially back. I will admit I am biased towards this formula because my skin loves green tea extract and fermented ingredients. It provides this healthy glow while actually soothing irritation. What I enjoy about this toner is how creamy it feels while remaining so hydrating. It is not thick or greasy. On a normal day, one layer is plenty. But if I'm particularly dry, I will do two or three. I've been using this at night with my retinoids and acids. It prevents me from flaking the next day. As for the value, it is unmatched. I opened this bottle in October, and despite constant use, I'm only halfway through. It is definitely worth the money. Next up is a product that caught me off guard, the Prequel Half and Half Fluid Moisturizer. When I first bought this, I went in with the assumption that it is going to be another version of the Laneige Cream Skin or the Road Glazing Milk. You know, that very fluid, milky toner vibe. But I have to tell you, it is so different. In my opinion, calling this a toner would be a total misinterpretation. I would categorize this as a lightweight lotion. The texture is like a liquidy cream. It is very fluid, but it is just so nourishing on the skin. If I use just one layer, it acts as this beautiful hydrating base that allows you to proceed with a heavier moisturizer or sunscreen on top. But if I do two layers, then I'm done. It sinks in and locks everything in place so effectively that I don't even feel the need for another product. One thing to keep in mind is that it adds a glow to my skin. If you have very oily skin, I would just stick to using one layer. You want that healthy glow, but you definitely want to avoid looking shiny or feeling greasy as the day goes on. The last skincare product I wanted to share with you guys is actually a moisturizer that I have shared before, but it's the one I keep coming back to whenever the weather gets this cold and dry. The Aestura Atobarrier 365 cream. It is a cream with tiny white capsules. They almost look like little beads, but as you massage it in, they melt instantly into the skin. It is not gritty at all. It's actually a very plush experience. Ingredient wise, it is a powerhouse. It uses a specific ratio of ceramides, cholesterol, and fatty acids, which are like the building blocks of a healthy skin barrier. If you're like me and you're dealing with those eczema flares or that raw feeling from the cold, these ingredients are what actually soothe and repair rather than just sitting on top of the skin. Even though I have layered the Dr. Ceuracle Essence and the Prequel Half and Half, this is my final seal. It doesn't feel heavy or suffocating, but it gives me the peace of mind that my skin isn't going to lose moisture to the dry office air or the wind outside, and it plays well with my makeup. So I have no complaints. Now let's transition to makeup. This has been a very complexion heavy month for me. I've been testing so many new foundations, concealers, and color correctors lately. I won't deep dive into all of them today, but definitely check my channel if you're curious about those new launches and how they compare. Since my skin has been super dry, there are two foundations that I've been using the most when I'm not in the testing mode. First up is the Victoria Beckham Foundation Drops. This is a formula that truly shines for me during the winter months. The consistency is very much a serum, but it somehow feels moisturizing and nourishing as you apply it. It sets down to this radiant finish, but I wouldn't call it dewy exactly. It gives my skin such a healthy, hydrated glow. The most important thing for me right now is how nourishing the formula is. It doesn't cling to my dry patches or emphasize any of the winter texture I am struggling with. I don't necessarily get a lot of coverage out of this. It is definitely a light coverage product. You can slightly build it up, but it's nothing major. Certainly not a heavy foundation. That is exactly why it looks so much like a second skin. It just makes my face look smooth and polished without looking made up. Now, when I want a bit more coverage, I have been reaching for the Chantecaille Future Skin Gel Foundation. Comparatively, this is much creamier than the Victoria Beckham drops. It still has that refreshing, hydrating feel, but it provides a more substantial level of coverage. It is also noticeably more blurring and smoothing on the skin. While the Victoria Beckham drops look like a second skin, the Chantecaille gives more of a polished and filtered effect. If I'm going to a work event, or if my skin is looking way too red and I just want to look more put together, this is the jar I'm going for. It gives me that extra bit of coverage without feeling heavy or masking my natural skin. Moving on, I actually think I should have mentioned this next product in the skincare category because I've been using this more as an eye cream than a makeup product. It is the RMS Eye Brightener. This has a subtle tint to it, and I've been using this as a final step of my skincare routine. So, after my moisturizer and sunscreen, I take a tiny amount, and you really don't need much, and apply it under my eyes and a little bit around my nose. I usually roll the cooling applicator under my eyes for about 30 seconds first, then squeeze out the product and blend it in. It adds brightness and cancels some of the darkness. Having said that, if you are going in with a foundation or concealer afterward, you definitely need to follow up with a light dusting of powder. I have noticed that if I don't set it, it can crease just a little bit. But that's honestly understandable. This is really an eye treatment, so it doesn't self set like a traditional color corrector or concealer. I have to say, I am pleasantly surprised by this launch. I actually didn't enjoy the original RMS concealer. I found it a bit too heavy for my liking. But this is a sophisticated, well executed product that I've been thoroughly enjoying. Next up is the Prada Micro Correcting Concealer. Of all the new concealer launches I have been testing lately, this is the one I find myself reaching for most often, especially because of its light to medium coverage. It has such a thin consistency, which makes it perfect to pair it with the RMS eye brightener I just mentioned. I love layering the two because they balance each other out beautifully. The RMS provides a hefty dose of moisture, so the product concealer doesn't look dry or heavy on my skin, even though it sets down to a soft matte finish. Together, they never look cakey, and with a light dusting of powder, they wear well throughout the day. Next, I wanted to share a powder bronzer with you guys. I actually picked up the Victoria Beckham Matte Bronzing Brick in shade 3 during the Black Friday sales last year. So, I've been using this for a while, but I'm finally getting around to sharing it with you. First, the heavy duty compact is stunning, very on brand for Victoria Beckham. But the formula is what really impressed me. While it is a true matte bronzer, the texture is this incredibly soft, slightly creamy powder. It's not a dry or patchy matte. It is a very natural looking soft matte. In fact, the consistency reminds me a lot of the YSL matte bronzer that I featured in my top luxury bronzers video. It has that same texture and finish on the skin. The formula is moderately pigmented, in my opinion. It doesn't pack a punch in a way that makes it difficult to blend, but it's certainly not sheer. You get two different tones in the brick, which makes it so versatile. The lighter shade is more of a golden tan with a neutral to warm undertone. The darker shade in this brick is a richer, toasted amber. It has more depth and a bit more warmth than the lighter shade. Since I don't have a much of a tan right now, I've been using the lighter shade. But I've also been mixing the two together when I want to add more warmth and dimension to my face. Even during the winter months when my skin is at its driest, it never looks patchy or emphasize my texture. The fact that a matte powder performs this beautifully on dry skin really speaks of how beautiful this formula is. It is a true luxury experience, and I regret not getting my hands on this sooner. All right, before we move on to the next product, if you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you appreciate luxury makeup, skincare, and fragrance, along with all the swatches and comparisons we do here, I would love to have you join our community. Make sure to subscribe and turn that notification bell so you're always in the loop whenever I share a new upload. Okay, so for my cream bronzer, I have been reaching for the Dior Bronzing Balm Stick from their Spring 2026 collection. I actually have a dedicated video reviewing and comparing that collection if you're curious about the other pieces. But this bronzing balm is easily the standout for me. The formula is creamy and emollient, yet surprisingly pigmented. Even though it has a punch of color, I have found it to be easily blendable. It just melts into the skin without any struggle. It doesn't move my foundation underneath, it doesn't slip or slide. I think describing this as a bronzing balm is spot on. It leaves this beautiful, glowy finish that looks so fresh. And even with that luminous finish, it wears well all day. I don't feel the need to set it with a powder bronzer, which is what I love because it allows that radiant, healthy glow to take the center stage. I really enjoyed it. Moving on to my favorite category, blushes. For blushes this month, I have been rotating through some of the newer launches alongside some of my long term favorites. We are going to start with an oldie but a goodie, and that is the Saie Dew blush in the shade Spicy. As you guys know, I love my terracotta blushes. I have even shared a dedicated video sharing 20 different terracotta blushes in the past. But out of all of them, this remains my most used shade. It has this rosy undertone that looks so beautiful and sun kissed on the skin. Especially now, in the dead of winter, these kinds of shade really wakes up my complexion and adds some much needed structure and life back into my face. The formula itself is so thin and lightweight, it sets to a dewy finish and adds a healthy glow to my skin. Similarly, from the Chanel Rouge Noir Confidence palette from their Spring 2026 collection, I have been particularly drawn to this deep, earthy red shade in the quad. It is a very vibrant color, so I have been pairing it with a very soft lip and a minimal eye look to really let the cheeks become the star of the show. There is something so elevated about this specific tone. It gives the skin a vibrancy that I find absolutely stunning. However, if I am in a mood for something softer and more natural, I've been reaching for the dusty muted mauve in the same palette. In my opinion, it is the most wearable, everyday shade in this collection. Because it has a neutral undertone, it is versatile. It is the kind of shade you don't have to overthink. It pairs effortlessly with almost any lip or eye look you have going on. While I'm not really a fan of the highlighter in this palette, I've been lightly dusting it over the muted mauve just to add a touch of glow to the cheeks. They pair quite beautifully together. However, I completely avoid using it with that deep earthy red. That shade already has a subtle shimmer in the formula, so adding the highlighter on top feels redundant and frankly unnecessary. But with the mauve, it adds just enough luminosity to lift the look and make it feel more polished. Also, this month I have been loving the Gucci Glow Dewy Powder Blushes, specifically the shade Soft Plum. It looked so deep and quite intimidating in the pan, but this plum shade is much more wearable than you would think. On the skin, it translates as a beautiful mid tone mauve, almost like a cool tone berry stain. It is not that heavy, bruised purple you might expect. Instead, it is a shade that adds instant lift and a healthy vibrancy to my winter complexion. In fact, I'm equally surprised by the shade Bright Ruby. It is so bright and vibrant, but because this formula isn't overly pigmented from the first wipe, it is so easy to blend. You really have the opportunity to build the color to your comfort level. I'm honestly shocked that I'm reaching for such a bold shade, but it is because of this beautiful formula. It is creamy, it is blendable, and most importantly, it is buildable. So you can play with such vibrant colors in a very controlled way. I promise you guys, just one more blush. I couldn't finish this video without sharing a shade that I've used a lot this month, the Dior Rouge Blush in Fizzy Crush. This was another standout from the Spring 2026 collection. And as someone who has always loved the Dior Rouge blush line, I had high expectations from this one. It is exactly what the name suggests, a vibrant, effervescent, peachy apricot with a hint of pink running through it. Because it has a shimmery finish, you can definitely see the luminosity in the pan, but once it is on the skin, it just looks fresh and radiant. It gives that awake look that we all crave for this time of the year. After all, you really cannot go wrong with a classic peachy blush. It is the ultimate way to add a healthy, youthful glow to any look. Moving on to another one of my favorite categories, lips. Much like the blushes we just discussed, my lip favorites this month are a curated mix of the brand new and some cherished old favorites. I wanted to start with the berries, as these are the shades I gravitate towards this time of the year. First is the Dior Addict Lip Glow in Black Cherry, which I picked up with the Spring 2026 collection. To be honest, this isn't necessarily my favorite lip balm formula. It is a bit stiff on application, and I typically prefer a more emollient, buttery texture. However, despite that stiffness, the color payoff is fantastic. It leaves this stunning, deep berry stain that looks incredibly chic. Because the formula isn't overly slippery or emollient, it actually has good staying power for a balm. It clings to the lips a bit better, and even as the gloss wears off, my lips never feel harshed or neglected. I've actually been keeping this in the purse for quick reapplications throughout the day when I want to add more color after eating or drinking. Another oldie but a goodie is the Givenchy Liquid Balm in the shade Black Pink. This is another one of those deep, sophisticated berry stains that I adore. The staying power on this, even though it is a liquid, is superior to the Dior. The color really anchors to the lips for almost 6 to 7 hours. Even after the initial balm finish wears off, that beautiful berry pigment remains. This is a liquid balm, not a gloss. It doesn't add a high shine, glassy effect to the lips. Instead, it provides a healthy dose of moisture that feels comfortable without being slippery. I find myself reaching for this time and time again. Now, for a very neutral, everyday nude, I have been thoroughly enjoying the MAC Luster Glass lipstick in the shade Thanks, It's MAC. Luster Glass is my favorite formula from the brand. It is sheer and balmy and comfortable on the lips. I believe this shade went viral a few months ago, and I can see why. Matt describes this as a taupey pink nude, and I find that description to be spot on. On my skin, it looks like a soft pinky nude. Interestingly, it has some silver sheen to it that makes this shade look cool tone. It definitely leans into that 90s inspired aesthetic that is so popular right now. I personally prefer to pair it with a lip liner just to add some structure to the lips and ensure that the coolness doesn't wash me out. If you have an olive undertone or a light to medium complexion, this is going to be that quintessential your lips but better shade. It is so versatile and complements almost any makeup look. Another formula I have found myself reaching for quite often last month, and is completely opposite of the MAC Luster Glass lipstick, is the Refi Satin Lipstick Pen in the shade Maple. Now, this is a very high pigment formula, yet it surprisingly maintains a nourishing, balmy base. It feels creamy and comfortable on the lips, which isn't always the case with a liquid lipstick. It has a rollerball applicator, and I know that can be a bit polarizing, but I have found that the best way to approach it is to apply just a tiny amount to the center of the lips and then blot it out. The shade Maple is such a stunning medium chocolate brown. It has this rich, earthy depth that just looks so pretty. Because it is so pigmented, a little goes a long way. And when blotted, it creates this very modern, matte balm finish that I've been loving. Moving on to the eye products, there are actually two shades I have been using interchangeably this month. The first is the Armani Eye Tint in the shade 22M. To be quite honest, this is a product that in my head doesn't even register as makeup. I'm someone who generally avoids eyeshadow, yet I find myself reaching for this even on days when I want a completely bare look. It is a beautiful neutral beige color, and the formula is a thin velvet matte that smooths and blurs the eyelid. It also neutralizes any discoloration, so it serves as a good base for any eye look you are going for. This shade 22M doesn't even look like an eyeshadow. Instead, it looks like my eyes are simply more awake. It adds a whisper of contour and dimension while smoothing out the texture of the lids. I love it. When I want a little more oomph and depth, I have been reaching for the Merit Solo Shadow in the shade Sartorial. While the Armani is my invisible base, Sartorial is what I use when I want a bit more presence. It is this deep, taupey brown that provides a moody editorial feel to the eyes. Now, this is marketed as a sheen eyeshadow, but please don't mistake this for a glitter bomb. This is not a glowy or sparkly eyeshadow in the traditional sense. It has a very soft focus sheen that simply prevents the lid from looking flat. The formula is a cream to powder that blends seamlessly. I use my fingers to create a hazy, diffuse look in seconds. I really enjoyed this formula. And finally, while we tested and compared quite a few eyeliners last month, the new Hangwengo Precision Gel eyeliners have truly stood out. These are super long lasting, but they're not your typical super creamy pencils. If you're looking for something to smudge out into a smoky wing, this isn't it. Instead, these are designed to provide precision. I have been using them to create a very tight, defined line right along the lash line, and the staying power is remarkable. I have specifically been reaching for the shade Soften the Edge, which is a deep, rich cocoa brown. It provides that definition without the harshness of a true black. If you value longevity and a crisp line, this is a formula I highly recommend you to try. Moving on, I also wanted to quickly mention a haircare favorite that has been working so well for me lately, the Kérastase pre-shampoo treatment from their Premier line. I love to use some kind of bond builders to keep my hair strong. But what makes this one so interesting is that it is designed to be a dual action product. So it helps with bond repair as well as with the calcium and mineral buildup. If you live in an area with hard water, or if your hair has been compromised by heat styling and coloring, this is a great product to try. It helps strip away those minerals that can make your hair feel brittle or look dull, all while working on the internal bonds. What I love most is how low maintenance it is. I know pre shampoo treatment sounds like a chore, but it's actually so simple. You just hop in the shower, wet your hair, and work this through your midlands and ends and wait for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you don't even rinse it out. You just go right in with your shampoo directly on top of it. It makes your hair look so shiny and smooth, and over time, it just makes your hair look healthy and nourished and not so dull and damaged. I really enjoy most of the Kérastase hair product I've tried so far. One last hair care product I have to mention, and I'm almost completely out of it, is the Gisu Honey Infused Hair Mask. As someone whose hair can get quite dry and prone to frizz, I have found that I almost exclusively use hair mask in place of a standard conditioner. My hair just needs that extra level of moisture to stay manageable and tangle free. What I appreciate most about the Gisu formula is that it adds a hefty dose of hydration. It nourishes and smooths the hair without weighing it down or making it feel greasy. And we have to talk about the scent. It is just divine. It smells like a warm floral honey that feels luxe but isn't overpowering. It lingers just enough to make your hair smell fresh and clean throughout the day. I really love this hair mask. Now, for a body care favorite, that was an incidental find for me and a total surprise. While placing a Yes Style order for some sunscreens and cleansers, I added the Haru Haru Wonder Smoothing Body Oil to my cart, thinking it would be a standard heavy oil for my winter routine. But I want you to look at this texture carefully. In the bottle, it doesn't look like a body oil at all. It actually looks like a milky toner, very similar to the consistency of the Prequel half and half we have discussed before. However, I was so pleasantly surprised by the performance. It is essentially a milky toner that, once massaged into the skin, reveals a touch of oil. It's almost like a lotion that transforms into this lightweight oil. It provides that nourishment without any of the stickiness. It absorbs almost instantly, which is rare for an oil based product. I have been using this exclusively right after the shower, and it replaced the need to layer a lotion and an oil separately. It's like a two-in-one product for me. The scent is this very fresh green lemongrass that feels clean. It isn't overpowering and only lingers for about 15 minutes. But honestly, I wish they would release more fragrances in this formula because the texture is just so good. If you are in a market for a body lotion or a body oil that isn't sticky and absorbs quickly, definitely check this out. All right, let's move into fragrances. If you have watched my last video, you have already heard me rave about the new Carolina Herrera Good Girl Jasmine Absolute. This is a brand new flanker to the line, and I have been completely captivated by it. This version has these added notes of creamy almond, and it transforms the scent into something so much deeper and more opulent. It is indulgent, yes, but to my nose, this isn't a typical gourmand. It avoids that cloying, sugary sweetness you might expect. Instead, it has this velvety quality. It is creamy and delicious, but it maintains a moody edge that makes it feel so elevated rather than just sweet. The jasmine in this version feels more concentrated and true. It cuts through that creamy almond with a floral intensity that grounds the scent. It is sweet, but the jasmine ensures it maintains a darker, more polished edge that feels very quite luxury. If I'm wearing this to work, I will do just two sprays, and I can still catch those beautiful wafts of jasmine and almond almost 6 to 7 hours later. When I'm actually heading out, I will go in with 4 or 5 sprays. It has this presence. It lingers in the air, and people definitely notice it. But it is so well blended that it never feels loud or overwhelming. Now, for those days when I want to play it safe and keep it low, you don't really want anyone to be able to smell your perfume. You know, those days where you want to feel put together, but you don't want a loud fragrance trail following you around. I have been reaching for the Dead Cool Extra Milk. I actually got this travel size in a gift box that I bought last year. Their collaboration with Soft Services Retinol Hand Cream. That's how I got to try this perfume. For a perfume called Extra Milk, this doesn't smell like tonic, milky, or gourmand at all. To my nose, it is just this soft, plush musk. It's what I would call a skin scent, similar to Glossier You or Fleur Missing Person. It is light, transparent, and creates this intimate aura that just smells like clean, warm skin. I was either wearing this perfume on its own or I will layer it with the Rare Beauty Layering Balm in Peony Blossom. If you haven't tried this one, it smells like a fresh floral scent. I can smell some freesia and peony notes, so it is a delicate, watery floral scent. Not very heavy vintage floral. I apply a tiny amount to my pulse points and spray the extra milk on top. They fuse together perfectly. I don't think this makes a fragrance loud by any means. It stays very close to the skin. However, the balm acts as a perfect primer. It extends the longevity by a good few hours, so I can still catch those fresh, musky wafts on myself throughout the day. If you're someone who loves soft skin scents, you will love it. I think it is perfect for those close encounter settings where you want to feel fresh but mindful of others, or even just running errands where you want to feel good in a very understated way. If you want a scent that feels like a whisper rather than a shout, you definitely need to get your nose on this. And that's it, my friends. That wraps up my January favorites. I hope this was an insightful look into what I have been reaching for lately. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which products have you been enjoying this past month? Did we have any favorites in common? Or is there something new you think I should have on my radar? Let me know in the comments below. As always, stay happy and healthy wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye for now.